My name is Miguel Palacios, and I'm an instructional designer here at the Center for Online and Continuing Education at FAU. Today, we're going to be exploring the topic of microlearning in a session that I have titled One Small Step for Students, Microlearning as a Giant Leap to the Learning Experience. Now, before we get started, I kind of wanted to talk from the perspective of instructors, because as instructors, we're always looking at student behavior to better understand their preferences and habits. And in understanding how they operate as students, we are able to effectively develop educational content that meets their needs and meets them where they are. One pattern that we've seen recently is a preference for short form content. This is the current pattern that has inspired this session today, where we are talking about microlearning, because I feel that microlearning can have an immense effect on the way that we connect with learners of this generation. So, today's professional development session aims to explore three questions regarding microlearning. The first is going to be, what is microlearning? The second being, who benefits from microlearning? And the third is going to be, how can microlearning be incorporated into the classroom, into a course? To start off, we're going to answer the question of what is microlearning. So I have a little bit of a definition here. We're going to go through. In 2003, microlearning was first coined as simply learning in small steps. As a strategy, microlearning has shown to be an effective way to develop and deliver instructions to students because of its condensed size. Now, when you look at the word microlearning, we all know what learning means, and micro is just the smaller version of that. Content offered through microlearning commonly appears as smaller components that contribute to the lecture. Imagine breaking down your course into specific topics that are concise and brief and allows learners to achieve mastery over one topic at a time. The benefit of offering content in small chunks like this is that it allows learners to utilize repetition in their studies to improve recall of a particular topic. Lastly, because microlearning is frequently delivered using digital technology, it enables learners to be able to take their learning on the go with their mobile devices. Collectively, these attributes of microlearning enable the learner to focus their efforts on areas that they need to improve, while giving them a vehicle, which are those little snippets of content, to enhance their comprehension. So now that we've defined what microlearning is, let's look at some different formats that are utilized in microlearning. So now you're going to see a lot of content here that looks familiar, and that is because microlearning does not create anything new to the learning process. It simply takes familiar formats and truncates them into shorter, more accessible forms. Examples of this would be text in the form of short readings that would cover a single topic. These would be normally around one page, under one page. And an example of this would be a summarization of the four forms of law in a, let's say, a hospitality class. Another form that you can see is images in the form of visual aids that summarize a topic covered in your lessons. This could be 1 to 2 images that maybe demonstrate the process of photosynthesis if you're teaching biology, and they can really take an entire idea and summarize it down to two pieces of content. Videos, which a lot of people that work with COSI know that we do a lot of video media work, uh, would encompass brief lectures that summarize a single concept of your lesson. This would be advised to be around 1 to 5 minutes long, and an example of this could be a demonstration of how to apply variable names in Python. Audio as excerpts can give context to the readings that you establish. And this, I also think, a healthy duration is around 1 to 5 minutes long. And an example of this could be an audio essay that discusses the impact of positive reinforcement on children. Now, the last piece that we see in this pie is the interactive elements, and that's kind of a little bit of an external component because this is how you're assessing, not how you're delivering the lecture. And interactive elements are most commonly quizzes or exams or assignments that learners are participating in. And in the micro learning format, this can appear as short form self check quizzes that allow the student to check and see how their understanding of the concepts are and really kind of provide themselves with a baseline. These can appear as low stake activities that allow the learners to not only self assess their progress, but study without the risk of negatively impacting their grade. Now, some of you may already use a combination of these elements in your courses, and what really makes these effective in microlearning is that they can be interchanged or combined. So, as I stated at the end there, the interactive elements are this separate thing. So, you can offer a short reading on a certain concept and follow that up by a excerpt that gives context to that reading, and then evaluate your learners by throwing in a self check quiz there at the end to let them really see where their studies are going. Now, incorporating small activities can also be utilized as supplements to already full lectures. Say if you have a full fledged lecture that's about 30 minutes long, you can incorporate small activities as supplements to your lessons. And this will enable your learners to be able to take those concepts and practice them on the go. So now that we have an idea of what microlearning is, let's look at who benefits from microlearning. If we look at microlearning from the instructor perspectives, there are three clear benefits to utilizing microlearning in your lectures. Uh, because content is being condensed into smaller formats, microlearning shows to be less time consuming to create, and that's because the short format allows for a quicker turnaround to recording. So let's look at an example of, say, there's a new concept that's added to the topic that you are covering in your course. Say, maybe we're doing comparative politics, and last year saw a lot of change in the political environment. So because you have offered it in microlearning and you've segmented your lecture up, you can actually create new content in a very quick turnaround and add it into your course and address those changes. Um, this also, as I state in bullet two, it makes it so that it's easier to update your course and arrange your course in multiple manners. So this flexibility of microlearning can enable you to adjust the arrangement of your course and gives you the opportunity to support or maybe remove a couple of modules of lessons from certain modules that you are studying. A good example of this would be if you notice that week 5 is a pretty dense topic in your discussion, and students are having a really hard time comprehending it, you can throw in and reinforce that lecture with more short form content to give students the opportunity to really study and become familiar with that content. Lastly, the speed of delivery is a huge positive impact of microlearning because there is a because the turnaround of producing those videos is so quick, you can actually deliver content to students in a way that is um, much quicker than re-recording a full 30-minute lecture or re-recording your current materials to update to the current changes. These examples are just a few that show how microlearning can enable an instructor to be more agile with their material and keeping their content current and relative and relevant to their students. By reducing the size of resources, you have greater control over the flow of your lectures, and this control gives you the power to easily update your content and make sure that each semester is providing the learner with a current overview of what the content is. So, in addition to there being instructor benefits, there are also a multitude of benefits for the learners. As I mentioned earlier, we are constantly looking for ways to engage and connect with our students to get them interested in the course topics and encourage a steady participation throughout the course. By including microlearning, you are able to actually and increase student engagement because you are condensing the heavy commitment of students. So, because the content is coming in shorter form, it is less of a time commitment for students and allowing them to really be more present in that lecture rather than having to go, okay, I remember this, now let's focus on this now. By separating into smaller chunks, your students will be able to engage with the individual concepts rather than being overloaded by a long form lecture. Another thing that microlearning can help students out with is that it can effectively help boost knowledge retention. Because these lectures are coming in short form content, they're easy for learners to repetitively go over and work to retain. Another advantage of condensing instructional materials is that it allows learners to really test their confidence with materials. Imagine providing a video as providing not only the lecture, but also a set of flashcards that learners can go over in their free time to be able to better absorb that topic. Which brings me to my third point, which is microlearning enables a self paced schedule for learning. Because these lectures are short and easy to review, learners can more effectively fit them into their busy schedules. An example of this would be if I were a student and maybe I'm taking a course on, um, let's say, economics, and I need to review for an exam, I can actually go in and cite the micro lessons on a commute to work or possibly, in my free time if I'm in between two tasks. Microlearning can serve as an effective tool for learner comprehension because it provides students with not only a short form lecture that is easy for them to absorb, but it delivers them in chunks that allow them to really fit that lecture and that content into their schedules and be able to review them by their own approach. So now here's the big final question is how can microlearning be incorporated into course curriculum? First, I would like to review a few examples of what microlearning looks like across the web. Uh, because of the surge in popularity of short form social media content, platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have become hubs for micro lessons that learners are using to review what they're learning in school. The first one that I have here is an example of how to use the FOIL method to solve binomials. The second one is a review of mean, median, and mode. And the last one is a example of how to apply and name and print variables in Python. Now, each of these is under a minute, with the Python one being, I think, about 30 seconds. Imagine how splitting this content will impact your students. Because not only are you providing them concise references to go back and study, but you're providing it to them one to one and allowing them to actually receive this information from you rather than having to go to an external website to find out how to do this. I feel like this dynamic really adds and fosters engagement between the student teacher relationship. And it really can be helpful in facilitating that. I think that a big thing is that when students can look to their instructors to get that resource and that extra help, it really fosters that relationship. Now, I can imagine many of you are saying, this is great, Miguel, but how would this look incorporated into a course? And let me show you. So, here are two examples of what a micro learning lecture would look like in one of our online courses. Each of these videos is covering a single topic under 2 minutes, and I have a muted version that I will play through as I go through it, and I have a linked version for when you receive the presentation afterwards. I'm going to send you all the slide deck so you can see the resources that I've collected. On the left-hand side, we have a video on the different types of firewalls in the internet technology era. This video describes the functions of each firewall, and something that could be added to this short format content is a low stakes matching quiz where learners are able to define each type of firewall and its functions. So not only are you providing them a means to review and study it, but you're providing them a short form way for them to test their knowledge. On the right-hand side, we have a brief demonstration of how to solve binomials. And using the FOIL method, they can go through and learn how to go through it and um, solve binomials using FOIL. And then this could be followed up with a handful of binomial problems for the learner to solve utilizing that method. So instead of it being a comprehensive component of learning and testing their comprehension, in this case they are learning and then testing the application of the FOIL method for solving binomials. So I did a lot of discussing there, and I would like to kind of open up the floor now to kind of hear what some of your thoughts are on microlearning and maybe some of the ways that you would like to incorporate microlearning, or maybe you have successfully incorporated microlearning into your teaching style. So I'm going to open that up right now, and we'll see what your comments are. Yeah, I really like what Catherine Hendrickson is saying there. TikTok is a very unexpected um medium to be able to learn from, but I have seen examples where, if there's a complex concept that they are needing to comprehend and understand, the benefit of TikTok is it loops until you swipe away from it. So you can bring up a video that is discussing, like, let's say maybe it's going over uh, transfer control protocol communication between two computers. And that's a bit of a hefty, dense topic. So I can take it, bring it up on my phone, and set it aside and have it just kind of loop back and really observe it you know, until you got it, and then you swipe away. And I think that, it's not necessarily a external platform that we need to utilize. This can all be done in Canvas. It's just really the formatting of how those videos are produced and how they are provided. If you can take and really segment your lectures into the important components of each part of it, and really um, you can take and up. I see I have a question from Ravi Berhara.
And actually, it's just what you were addressing, Miguel.
Oh, perfect.
Question and for a neat presentation, Miguel.
Thank you.
The question I have specifically is, Canvas is not I mean, TikTok is great, right? I've been looking
Mhm.
at it for some time, but using Canvas on my mobile device is not the same. I got to log in, register, etc. So, what tools do you recommend outside of Canvas that gives that easy entry point for the users on the go? And what other tools might exist that can, I mean, TikTok is great, but how can I then link it back to my Canvas roster if I put a, graded assignment, even if it's a low cost or low, risk assignment, how do I link it back then? Or do I just track it on then manually connect the two?
Well, I think that's a great question, Dr. Berhara. And what I've seen it done in a couple of different ways where, I've seen instructors just go straight to the platform. If they are interested in integrating TikTok videos in that sort of formatting of lecture, they will just use TikTok, or they will use YouTube is another one where we, in our course development process, we will take YouTube videos that maybe an instructor would like to use and embed them into the Canvas course. And really, I think that if the students are utilizing the Canvas application on their phone, they can have a very similar experience to being on TikTok and searching, except for there's not really searching involved. You're providing it all up front. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's really not necessarily a platform specific thing. It's really, you can take your phone and film a video that is we'll call it TikTok inspired lecture video. And you can take and upload that to Canvas and have it be there for your students to access on their mobile devices or on their laptops and go over them repetitively.
Yeah, no, I get that, and thanks for that those comments. But other than TikTok, what specific platforms do you see people using outside of Canvas? I mean, YouTube has been there for a long time,
Mhm.
and I've used it for years. But whether is it TikTok or is it Instagram, which one of those seems to be the most effective and commonly used?
The ones that I think are more commonly used would probably be YouTube because TikTok is still fairly new. But I think it's only a matter of time before we're really kind of looking at that as a method of, being able to get information and learn new concepts from. A Emily from our staff, she also mentioned that, developing podcast episodes that are short form have a really, effective way of communicating information to students. I would say for the purpose of development, I would say YouTube is a little bit more versatile because not only can you do a horizontal video that is, maybe a little bit more long form, but you can actually condense those long form videos into what YouTube is calling their YouTube shorts. So you can actually take a long form video, segment it into short chunks there on YouTube, and then I believe you have the ability to embed those once they are completed and created.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Can I
no
add a
worries.
comment to Miguel, please?
Absolutely, Judy.
Dr. Bahara, you have an excellent format within the concept maps that you use, and that could well be utilized as a tool, perhaps outside of Canvas, or as you do, create them and put them into Canvas. But that would be a really effective short form format to include.
Yeah, and I also really love Catherine Hendrickson's her suggestion of maybe a good way to get start is to really speak to your students and see what examples of things that they are actually utilizing to comprehend, like maybe have an assignment where the student has to find a short form learning concept that's being illustrated in a short form video and provide it to the class and really kind of share that experience not only with you as the instructor but with the class as a whole. So because for me as a student, and I'm currently a student as well, I TikTok is very new to me, so people utilizing that to learn is kind of exciting and has a lot of potential. If there are any other questions, I will happily take them on.
And I'm going to ask, while you're waiting for those to come in, I'm gonna ask Dr. Bahara if Evernote is still as effective as it used to be. I haven't seen much about it lately, but yes, it was an effective tool.
Yeah, and I think that, with Web 2.0 applications and just that ability to collaborate in a single setting can be very, effective as a good supplement to micro learning and being able to foster that collaborative nature among students.
Yeah, regarding Evernote, I haven't used it in a while. I used it when it was fairly new, and it was essentially for an assignment. People would take pictures. I did a demo and showed how they can use it with an example, and then they would take pictures and incorporate that into the assignment and submit the assignment through Evernote. But it was free in those days, and so after that, they made it a more complicated tool. So I backed off that.
I also
Yeah.
really Flipgrid is another one that I feel like I'm not entirely familiar with, but I feel like among teachers, it's a very popular tool for communicating. And as Aubrey Jacques has said in the chat, Flipgrid is another great tool that works similar to TikTok, and it allows that feedback to happen in a social media video-esque format. And it actually does work with Canvas, so that might be something worth exploring, Dr. Berhara, is maybe incorporating a Flipgrid system into your course to really kind of mimic what social media is doing. Do we know if the students will continue to use the microlearning segments throughout a course? That's a great question. And I think that really it's all about usability for me. is if you have students that are going to be able to go through an entire 30-minute lecture and really pull from that and benefit from that, then having micro learning segments um, is kind of accommodating both parties, because if you do have a greater um, if you have an easier time going through a long lecture and being able to, pull from that, you can actually go through multiple segments at a time and really progress at your own pace. So I think it kind of benefits both parties. Um, Whether or not they will continue to use it in the future is totally up to, the trends in student preferences and how that changes. I'm sure in the next couple of years there will be a new thing that we will have to, learn how to communicate through that common ground with our students on. But I think that's really a future endeavor. So for this last slide, I wanted to go through and provide a couple of resources that I found during the creation of this presentation. So I think that in being able to gear a course to utilize microlearning, there are a couple of resources that might be helpful here. And there's a ton of different resources out there on the web that can be useful for creating microlearning content, whether it be utilizing Edpuzzle to integrate a quiz into a short form video, or segmenting a long video into shorter forms by integrating questions. Um, and I think that, one article that I found very interesting was the one on adaptive microlearning. So really being able to take those micro segments and enable learners to kind of go at their own pace and have the course kind of adapt to it. So, like, maybe say if there is a certain concept that the micro learning is showing, maybe students are struggling with this concept, you can have a backlog of, more practice materials to provide those students that maybe are scoring in a certain score range on that particular portion. But yeah, these are some articles that I found very useful in developing this professional development. And when sending this presentation deck to you all, uh, I definitely encourage you to have a click through and look at them and see what each author has to say in regards to microlearning, because I think that as a tool, it could definitely be um, something that we utilize. And even in the case of the way that we offer online courses now, I'm sure that a lot of you are, already utilizing some micro learning components and aren't even aware that they're micro learning. That happens all the time. So I'm going to leave it on this last slide. And of course, if y'all have any other questions, I am here to, answer and to communicate and kind of talk through it with you. But it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to present this to you all, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.